Paulo Costa is no longer fighting next weekend.
For the love of God! For the love of God! Please! Damn! Damn!
Yes, you guys, yesterday news came out that Paulo Costa will no longer be fighting Ikram Aliskerov at UFC 291 in Salt Lake City. We're going to break it all down, what this means for Costa's future, and new rumors that have since circulated since yesterday's news. Please, you guys, like the video, subscribe, and comment down below letting me know your thoughts. Okay, you guys, so as I said yesterday, news broke that Costa will no longer be fighting on next weekend's UFC 291 against Ikram Aliskerov. So when this news came out, we didn't hear, oh, it's for an injury, oh, the fight's being pushed back because of, medical reasons, health reasons. Nothing was really given to us. Really, how we know that this fight actually is off is through Alaskerov's camp. People in his camp were saying that the fight was off, that now they're preparing for a new opponent, for 291. And Paulo Costa himself hinted at this on Twitter. And so, first off, it sucks that we're not going to see Paulo Costa fight next weekend. And, the crazy thing is, I think he even said himself that he hasn't even signed to fight, Ikram Aliskerov. It's weird because back earlier this year, I don't know if you guys remember, in February, he was originally set to take on, Robert Whittaker on that Australia card. The fight was scheduled and everything, and then just out of nowhere he just pulled out. And it wasn't because of an injury or anything crazy like that. It was because he said that he's not fighting Robert Whittaker because he never signed off on the fight.
Did you ever say yes to this fight?
That was a pretty fake news, because I didn't get a contract or terms or nothing to fight him.
And so what he claims is that the UFC were using one of their tactics of announcing the fight before it was actually signed in order to pressure Costa into signing for the bout. And man, it was such a bummer that we actually didn't get to see Robert Whittaker fight, in Australia. And so, when this fight with Alaskerov was announced, everyone kind of scratched their head because it's like, dude, Bohachinia just beat, former champion Luke Rockhold, an impressive performance, and a very fun fight. And, after the fight, Costa's talking about Khamzat Chimaev, big star in the UFC. He's talking about Robert Whittaker, number one contender. He's even talking about fighting up at light heavyweight against Jan Blachowicz. So why is he all of a sudden being booked against a guy who just made his debut in the UFC, has only had one fight in the organization, and for what it's worth, doesn't really have a name value for him, to be fighting so high up the rankings? I mean, Paulo Costa is a top 10 fighter and is just outside the top 5. So to me, it makes absolutely no sense why this fight was taking place. And so what many people said was, well, the reason why this fight is happening is because we're punishing Paulo Costa for pulling out of the Robert Whittaker fight. And to everyone, it just seemed like the UFC were trying to, just set up Costa for failure because of what he did earlier in February. And Costa hasn't always been, the best to deal with for the UFC. If you remember, he had that whole weight scenario when he was supposed to fight at middleweight and then came in like 20 pounds heavier, made Marvin Vettori move up. He's always talking about contract renegotiations, that he has to get paid X, Y, and Z. And so with that fight being announced, it just seemed like the UFC was just against him. But it seems like the UFC kind of did a power play here, and I'll get to that in just a second. So one thing that I do want to point out is that UFC 294 will be taking place in October in Abu Dhabi. And so far as it stands, we only have one fight set up for that card, which is with Muhammad Mokaev and Tim Elliott. We know that Islam Makhachev is going to be on that card, and we know that Khamzat Chimaev is also going to be on that card. But for Khamzat, we have literally no clue who he's going to fight. I actually don't know how accurate this is, but Aiden Ross actually leaked out that Kamaru Usman will be the one fighting Khamzat Chimaev.
Oh, bro, y'all are pissing me the fuck off. You don't know. Usman and Chimaev. Like, damn, bro. October 21st. Y'all didn't know that, you casuals? Oh, what? Wait. Did I just... Bro. Oh God, y'all had no idea. No shit, bro. Y'all would have spammed it, bro, when I asked you guys 30 fucking times.
And then to back that up, we were getting reports that this fight was actually going to take place at middleweight. But then just last week, we were hearing Kamaru say that he's not going to end up fighting Khamzat if it's not at 170, for him to drop the weight and, make the weight and fight at welterweight. So I wouldn't necessarily say that fight is out of the picture, just because we don't know where Khamzat, where he's going to be at. If he's going to go back down to 170 because he says he can make the weight, or if he's going to, permanently be at 185. And so another option was revealed a couple weeks ago. One of Khamzat's coaches went ahead and took a screenshot and shared it on his Instagram stories. And it was a screenshot of a fight, and he kind of had like highlights over it, so you really couldn't tell who were the people fighting. But once you actually took little bits and pieces and put it together, you could see that it was, Kelvin Gastelum versus Jared Cannonier. So assuming that from what we've heard is true, that it will actually be Khamzat versus Jared Cannonier, they even went ahead and asked Jared after his last fight against Marvin Vettori if he would want that fight.
Is that fight gives me a title shot?
Possibly, yeah.
You think so?
I think so.
I don't know. He's not even ranked in middleweight, is he?
He's not.
So, I know he's popular. Everybody wants to see him do his thing and stuff like that. If they called me and said, hey, Khamzat, for a contenders match, that's a yes.
The reason why I wouldn't say it would be Kelvin Gastelum is just because he's already scheduled to fight Shavkat on that Mexican Independence Day card. But two potential options, Jared Cannonier and Kamaru Usman. And so the final option brings us back to the whole point of the video. After Khamzat's last fight, the biggest person that was heavily rumored to be taking him on next was Paulo Costa. That fight seemed to be in the works for a while, but we don't know why it didn't materialize and why that fight never ended up taking place. They have a huge beef with each other. You're literally always seeing Paulo Costa, make videos about Khamzat. And he's even out here stealing his hat and putting it all over his nutsack. Like, it's hilarious, the beef that they have.
And this is Khamzat Chimaev's hat.
This is Khamzat Chimaev gourmet Chechen hat. No. This hat's from here. Look.
No, Paulo.
Come on.
Paulo. Oh my gosh.
Is it from him?
No, it's from his cousin. It's from his cousin.
My God! Chimaev, I got your head.
And to be honest with you, out of the options between Usman, Jared Cannonier, and Paulo Costa, I feel like the one most appealing to me, the one that I really want to see, is the one against Paulo Costa right now.
I want to fight you. You want to fight me?
I want to fuck you up right now.
Okay.
Yes, come on,
Let's
come
go.
on.
Let me hear.
Come on, I'm here. You said you were gonna fuck me up. I'm here now. When I hear you, pussy, yeah?
And so going back to the subject of the video, Paulo Costa ended up pulling out from his last fight, right? And so just hours after this was revealed, reports were coming out that the UFC is now looking to schedule Khamzat Chimaev versus Paulo Costa for the Abu Dhabi card. So it just seems like the UFC pulled the plug on the fight and said, you know what, we're gonna have him fight Khamzat instead, which is crazy. You gotta feel bad for Ikram now because he was, preparing for Paulo Costa. And so if these reports are true that Khamzat is now gonna fight Paulo Costa, I mean, I'm not mad at it at all. This was the fight that should have took place first off, to even start. And so this was actually seemingly confirmed by Costa himself, because MMA Paulie tweeted saying the reason why Costa is no longer fighting next week is because he's going to end up fighting Khamzat. And Costa himself tweeted saying that he's a smart man, replying to the tweet. So that seemingly just confirms it that this fight, is in the works. Now, in the works, yes. Happening, we still have to see how this whole thing plays out, because Khamzat ended up tweeting himself, earlier today, saying that he has already been booked and it's going to be against an opponent better than Costa. So who knows what any of this means? Who knows where Paulo Costa is going and what's going to happen with him next because of, him pulling out? Or maybe he didn't even pull out. Maybe he was taken out of the fight. Who knows what's going to happen with any of this? We just got to wait to see what Dana White and the UFC says. But I do think it's very interesting that if the UFC pulled him out for this reason and they're looking to put him against Khamzat on that Abu Dhabi card, that kind of sets us in a clear direction of where Khamzat's career is going right now. He's fighting a guy that's in the top 10 at middleweight and will most likely fight another, top guy, preferably, top 5 before he actually fights for the title at middleweight. If he ends up getting scheduled against a welterweight, that's going to, completely change, the narrative of how things are going to go. Because you can definitely argue Khamzat is 1 to 2 fights away from a title shot. And so depending on how the UFC schedule it, we could potentially see that take place in next year's 2024. But so let me know what you guys think. Drop a comment down below. Today's question is, who do you want to see Khamzat fight next? That'll be the question. Let me know what you guys think. Please drop a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys tomorrow.